where would you start a discussion with a Calvinist who has very little knowledge or respect for the teaching of the church, and how can I make that discussion productive?
Well, one thing you could do is consult the resources at calltocommunion.com, which have been placed there for precisely this reason. It's a rather extensive website, and the entire thing is meant to guide Catholics and Calvinists or Reformed Protestants in dialogue with one another. And you'll find articles on many, many topics of Calvinist theology and Catholic engagement with those, and lots of stories of people who have been Calvinists and become Catholics. So that's a great resource to go to. That website actually predated the existence of this radio show. The radio show took its name from the antecedent website, of which I was a participant, still am a participant. But there are a couple of questions that are important, not just for Calvinists, but for all Protestants to wrestle with. And one of them is the question, how do we actually know the content of the Christian faith? How do we come to know the content of the Christian faith? Did Christ himself give us a means, an authoritative means, to transmit the content of the Christian faith? And if so, what is that means? And your typical Calvinist will immediately advert to the Bible. The problem with that move is that Christ never indicates to us that that's the source from which we're to learn the content of the Christian tradition.
That's right.
It is like one of the principal convictions of Calvinism, but it's an unbiblical one. And you want to go there. You want to go there. That's one place you want to start. You want to raise the question of, once you've gotten the Bible, how do you know that you have the right list of books? The canon question. Even if you acknowledge that the Bible is the Word of God, how do you know you got the right list of books belonging to the Word of God? And you can't really know that without the authority of the Catholic Church, the authority of the Catholic tradition. If you dispense with Catholic tradition, you have to dispense with certainty about the contents of the canon. There was one Reformed Calvinist minister, R.C. Sproul, who freely acknowledged this. He because he disregarded the authority of the Catholic Church, he admitted that he had a fallible list of books that he regarded as infallible. Right? But he freely, I can't know with certainty that I've got the right list. Well, if you don't know that, then any one of them's up for grabs, or all of them are up for grabs, and you can't have any certainty at all in your act of faith. Yeah. You want to raise the question of how do you know it? So granted the Bible, granted the list of the canon, how do you know if in your interpretation of that book, your conclusions are to be regarded as articles of faith, dogmas that everyone has to hold, or just your own private opinion? And most Protestants I know recognize a kind of distinction between those things all Christians have to believe, i.e. dogmas, and those things that might be a matter for legitimate disagreement. How do you differentiate between those two categories? How do you know what's a dogma and what's an opinion? And the answer to that question historically throughout Protestantism has shifted. And what counts as a dogma and what counts as an opinion has shifted within Protestantism historically. I'll give you an example. 1541, Calvin wrote a little treatise on the Lord's Supper called A Little Treatise on the Lord's Supper.
Okay.
And in that book, he said that a correct understanding of the nature of Christ's presence in the Eucharist was necessary for salvation. You had to get your Eucharistic theology right to go to heaven. Now, I'm not interested in, within Protestantism, whether that opinion, was right or wrong. I'm really interested in the fact that Calvin's view of what constituted a dogma, he came up with a very different list than you would hear from Protestants today. I don't know any contemporary Protestant, that would say the nature of the Eucharist is something that's necessary for salvation, i.e., a dogma. Mm-hmm. Well, who's right? Their founder or the contemporary Calvinists? And on what principle? Right. So these kinds of issues with religious authority are just pervasive in Protestantism, rarely addressed directly. And when they are addressed directly, they usually revert to some form of subjectivism or illuminism. Yeah, I know because God told me. And, it's a very hubristic way of doing theology. I'm right and you're wrong. Why? Because God says so. And you can certainly hold that, but you can't set that forth as a basis for the public unity of the church, except through some sort of coercion or charismatic authority. But that devolves into the personality cult, and that's kind of ugly.
Sure.
So a lot of problems that Calvinists have to deal with before you can even start talking about salvation or predestination or all those other good things. How do you even answer the question, what is the Christian faith? And that's where I would go.